The Michael Berry Show.
Democrats have said you don't need a federal takeover of Washington, D.C. Crime is down. However, the Washington, D.C. police officers are saying crime is not down. We've been pressured to not report certain crimes. Greg Pemberton is the chairman of the Washington, D.C. Police Officers Union. Welcome to the program, sir.
Michael, thanks for having me. Great to talk to you.
Chairman Pemberton, is crime worse in D.C. today than it was a year or two or three? For people who haven't seen it for themselves, put it into perspective.
Well, in 2023, we saw violent crime totals topping 30-year highs. We had nearly 300 homicides that year. We had 960 armed carjackings, thousands of robberies, thousands of shootings, numbers that we hadn't seen since the crack epidemic in the early 1990s. Since then, the police department reported in 2024 that crime dropped 36%, and this year they're reporting that it's dropped another 25%. But as you very eloquently stated in your intro, we don't believe that that's true. The reason being is that, one, our NBC affiliate here in Washington uncovered information earlier this month that a commander of a police district is now under investigation and has been stripped of his police powers for going into police databases and changing classifications from felonies to misdemeanors so that those felonies aren't carried on the monthly reports. And in addition to that, we know that our members are being told when they go to these scenes and victims are reporting that they were a victim of a violent crime or a felony, that managers are coming to those scenes, lieutenants, captains, and above, and are ordering the officers to take reports for lesser offenses to keep those crime stats moving in a downward trajectory. But what anybody that works or lives or travels to D.C. knows, as you mentioned, it really is problematic. Anywhere you go, you can feel and sense it's palpable that there is criminal activity afoot, whether that's the smell of marijuana smoke, whether that's traffic incidents, whether that's more violent crime like robberies and carjackings. It's ubiquitous throughout the city. And so we don't believe that crime has gone down. We believe that that's a manipulation of the crime stats here in the district.
June 30th in the 1200 block of 7th Street, Eric Tarpinian Yakim was shot and killed. He was a 21-year-old congressional intern. That's only one person's seemingly isolated incident, but those types of things tend to catch a lot of attention. Then we had Big Balls this past week, who was beaten pretty badly by about 10 young folks. We've had some of these high-profile cases. How common are these cases? I have to tell you, I've been going to D.C. since I clerked there as a young lawyer in 1995, and it feels less safe, but I've also grown older. I recognize that.
Well, unfortunately, they're all too common. I mean, one of your representatives from Texas, Henry Cuellar, was carjacked in Navy Yard. I think that was earlier this year. We had Angie Craig, a representative from Minnesota, who was assaulted in her elevator of her own apartment building. There are multitudes of staffers that have been victims of robberies, assaults, carjackings. Rand Paul's staffer was stabbed in the head probably about a year and a half ago. And the stories continue and continue. Obviously, those are the ones that you hear about because they make the news. But on a day-to-day basis, our officers are running call to call to call for these various types of incidents that are happening to citizens all over the city. And it's a disservice to the police department to manipulate these crime stats. It's a disservice to the city. And ultimately, it's an ultimate disservice to these victims because we're not dedicating the proper resources to investigating those cases and trying to close those cases. But ultimately, what's the takeaway? The bad guys get away with it, right? Because we're not doing what we need to do to get handcuffs on them and get them into the criminal justice system, no matter how broken it is here in the district. But we need to do our job on the front end, which is handcuff these guys and get them booked and charged with these crimes. And we can't do that in the current environment that we're working in.
Greg Pemberton is the chairman of Washington, D.C. Police Officers Union. President Trump has sent in some feds over the weekend, seemingly in a supplemental capacity to assist the D.C. police officers. Nobody's criticizing the D.C. police officers and the work they're doing. They're outmanned, outgunned, overwhelmed, understaffed. The problems that we see across the country. Do you welcome a greater federal presence on the streets?
Definitely, but let me back up a little bit and give it a little context. In 2020, our city council here, the municipal government legislative branch, passed a multitude of pieces of legislation that handcuffed police officers, that made it impossible for them to do their jobs, and increased their liability for administrative, civil, and criminal sanctions, even when they go out and do their job properly. And since then, we have had a mass exodus of police officers. Our police agency has an authorized staffing level of 4,000 sworn members. We are currently sitting at 3,180 with more than 800 vacancies for the position of police officer. The way the department is making up that difference, that staffing difference, is through mandatory overtime. And we're currently working more than 2 million hours per year in overtime, which is completely unsustainable. It is 4 times or maybe even 5 times the pre-COVID averages for annual overtime rates. And it is burning out our officers, and it is sending people packing for other agencies where they aren't treated this way. And the reason that the feds are looking at this and saying, let's send some supplemental resources, which of course we welcome, is because we cannot staff the police department based on the way our local government treats us, which is just a horrible environment for policing and public safety.
Agreed. Get an officer hurt as well. Greg Pemberton, the chairman of the Washington, D.C. Police Officers Union, will be watching the president's remarks today closely. I know you'll be there. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
You are listening to Michael Berry Show.